Good afternoon, everyone. Today we will be discussing chapters 9 to 11, which we will tackle the following. First, global atmospheric changes. Second, freshwater resources and water pollution. And third, the ocean and fisheries. But first, let us start with chapter 9.
Good afternoon, I am Ezekiel V. Santos and I'm going to discuss the atmosphere and climate. Case study: melting ice and rising sea levels. Antarctic ice pack has lost 40% of volume since 1980. Muir Glacier, Alaska. Compare photographs from 1903 to 2004. Human-caused increased atmospheric CO2 from fossil fuel burning. Challenges of global atmospheric changes. Climate change, ozone depletion, acid deposition. Learning objectives. Distinguish between weather and climate. Summarize the effects of solar energy on Earth's temperature. Explain several reasons for regional precipitation differences. Weather. Conditions in the atmosphere at a given place and time varies hour to hour, day to day. It is the changes happening to the strength of the wind, temperature, atmospheric pressure na nag-iiba araw-araw o oras-oras. Climate. Typical weather patterns that occur in a place over a period of years, determined by temperature and precipitation. Ito yung mga average temperature in different seasons gaya ng rainfalls and sunshine. Earth has many different climates. Nagbabago yan kada taon, tumataas at bumababa, umiinit at lumalamig. Organisms can adapt to specific climates. Animals can adapt to some certain climates. For example, polar bears, they can adapt to a very cold climate and iguanas can adapt in a very hot climate. Rapid changes to climates may lead to extinction and ecosystem degradation. Pag lumagpas yung temperature ng klima at kayang i-adapt ng isang hayop, ay maaari nyo itong ikamatay. Solar radiation and climate. Insolation equals sunshine. Ito yung radiation na natatanggap ng Earth galing sa Sun. It is a major determinant of climate. Makes life on Earth possible. Liquid water, warm planet, photosynthesis. It also powers Earth's biogeochemical cycles and drives winds and ocean currents. In this picture, you can see how radiation is being distributed on Earth. On the right side, the total absorption by atmosphere, land, and water is 69%. Absorption by gases and particles in the atmosphere is 17%. Absorption by clouds is 3%. On the left side, the total reflection back into space is 31%. Reflection by particles in atmosphere is 3%. Reflection by clouds in atmosphere is 19%. Reflection of ice, snow, and light-colored land is 9%. You can see at the bottom of the arrow, the absorption by land and ocean hits Earth by 49%. It also says here that warm surface re-emits heat as infrared radiation, which is returned to space or to surface by greenhouse gases. Solar radiation and climate. Temperature changes with latitude and season, based on the amount of sunlight received. If the light strikes vertically, there is only a small area of illumination. If the light strikes at an angle, larger area is being illuminated. In this picture, it presents the different angles of Earth in non-evolution. Vernal equinox, March 20. Spring in Northern Hemisphere, autumn in Southern Hemisphere. Summer solstice, June 21. Summer in Northern Hemisphere, winter in Southern Hemisphere. Autumnal equinox, September 22. Autumn in Northern Hemisphere, spring in Southern Hemisphere. Winter solstice, December 21. Winter in Northern Hemisphere, summer in Southern Hemisphere. Precipitation. Any form of water that falls from the atmosphere. Three factors determine precipitation: amount of water in an atmosphere, geographic location, and topographic features. It says here in the picture that what a scientist sees, rain shadow. First, let's determine what is windward side and leeward side. Windward side is where the air is forced to rise. Leeward side is the one sheltered from the wind. As you can see in the picture, the moist air goes up in the clouds, then it filters the dry air and it goes down in the leeward side.
Climate change. What is climate change and what is the cause and effect of climate change? Climate change is the long-term alternation of temperature and typically weather patterns in a place. Earth's average temperature is increasing. The cause of the current climate change is largely human activities like burning, fossil fuels, natural gas, oil, and coal. Ang climate change daw ay pagbabago ng ating klima o panahon dahil daw po sa pagtaas ng green grasses po na nagpapainit sa ating mundo. At ang kasalukuyan pong cause na ito ay mga large human activities nga po, tulad nga po ng burning, electricity, mga run cars and other forms of transport and power, and manufacturing and industry po. Effects of climate change: rising maximum and minimum temperature, rising sea levels, higher ocean temperature, an increase in heavy precipitation, heavy rain or hail, shrinking glaciers. At ang effects daw po ng climate change ay ang pagtaas at pagbaba ng temperatura po natin at pagtaas ng sea levels, paglamig ng dagat, pagbagsak ng ulan na nagkakos po ng bagyo, at pag-ulan po ng yelo na hindi naman po natin nararanasan ngunit ang ibang bansa lamang po. Pagkatunaw daw po ng yelo tulad po sa Antarctica, ganun po, na pag natutunaw po ito, pwede daw po ito mag-cause ng tsunami or flooding. And next, global climate change. What is the causes of global climate change and the effects of global climate change, and what we can do to prevent global climate change? Global climate change is a long-term shift in global or regional climate patterns, specifically to the rise in global temperatures from the mid-20th century to present. The global climate is ito po yung difference in temperature, precipitation, and winds over the long term at that location. At ito do po ay tinukoy bilang global climate change. At nakapagtala tayo simula noong 20th century ng malalaki at pandaigdigang pagbabago sa ating klima ng ating mundo hanggang ngayon. Causes and effects of global climate change. Causes: energy use, deforestation, transport, agriculture practices, and pollution. And the effects: unpredictable weather patterns, increase in extreme weather events, land degradation, loss of wildlife and biodiversity, and rising sea levels. Dito pinapakita ang cause and effect ng global climate change, at ang climate change ay hindi po natin ito mapipigilan. And what we can do to prevent global climate change po. For example po, improvements to energy efficiency and increase fuel economy and increase wind and solar power at iba pa po.
Good morning everyone, my name is John Ricardo H. Mercado, you may just call me Rickson, and I will be discussing about the ozone depletion in the stratosphere. In this topic, I will be describing the importance of the stratospheric ozone layer. Next, I will be explaining how the ozone thinning or ozone depletion takes place and relate some of its harmful effects. And of course, relate how the international community is working to protect its ozone layer. As you can see, that is our stratosphere. Okay, so what is stratosphere? The stratosphere is a layer of the Earth's atmosphere. It is the second layer of the atmosphere as you go upward. The bottom of the stratosphere is around 10 kilometers above the ground at middle latitudes. The top of the stratosphere occurs at an altitude of 50 kilometers. So in other words, it lies above the Earth's weather and mostly changes very little. It contains the ozone layer, which shields us from the sun's ultraviolet radiation, except where it's been harmed already by man-made chemicals. So, what is ozone? Ozone, or O3, is a human-made pollution in troposphere, natural component of stratosphere. And the ozone layer, as I previously mentioned, shields the Earth's surface from the UV radiation or ultraviolet radiation. Now, what is ozone depletion? Ozone depletion, also known as ozone thinning, is the gradual thinning of the Earth's ozone layer in the upper atmosphere. caused by the release of chemical compounds containing gaseous chlorine or bromine from industry and other human activities. The thinning is most pronounced in the polar regions, especially in Antarctica. So here are the main causes of ozone depletion. It is actually due to the chemicals done or produced by human activities. Okay? First, we have CFCs or freon. Yan yung ating mga coolants, aerosol, propellants, styrofoams, air fresheners, at iba pa. Next, we have halons or fire retardant, as you can see in the picture here. Ayan. And next, we have methyl bromide. Yan yung ating mga pesticides. Next, we have methyl chloroform. Yan yung ating mga industrial solvents. Another industrial solvents are katulad ng carbon tetrachloride. And lastly, we have nitrous oxides like coal burning waste and fertilizer breakdown. So basically, due to these chemicals, or should I say pollutants, yan yung nagiging main cause ng ating ozone depletion, yung gradual thinning ng ozone layer. Now let's move on to effects. Like the UV or ultraviolet rays reaches the Earth's surface even closer or even more, which results into the ecosystem's disruption like Antarctic phytoplankton. Yan. It damages the wildlife. Yan, yung mga Antarctic fish, yung mga amphibians, yan, reptiles, nadadamay po lahat yan. Then, of course, it causes human health problems. Yan, mga cataracts, skin cancer, tapos it lowers the immunity of our immune system. Yan. So, pag pinagpatuloy pa natin to, it causes more harm to not only to the world but also to the people living in our world. So, for our last part, we have mitigation and recovery. In worldwide, may mga naban and reductions in use already. So, in 1978, the US banned CFCs used as propellants. Tapos naman in 1987, Montreal Protocol may reduction ng 50% by 1998. So, CFCs phased out by 1996 in developing countries. So, as we all know, CFCs will continue to deplete or gradually make our ozone layer or stratospheric ozone thinner. So, what did we learn today? Let's have a recap. First, we learned about the stratosphere, which is a layer of the Earth's atmosphere. Next, we knew that there is an ozone depletion or ozone thinning in our Earth's ozone layer. And the main cause of ozone depletion is due to chemicals and pollutants done by human activities like CFCs. And the effects give a disruptive result to our Earth's surface. That is it. Thank you po.
Good afternoon everyone. I'm Jeremy Andinaro, second year student, being major in financial management, and I'm here to discuss the last part of chapter 9. To start off, what is acid deposition? Acid deposition is a type of air pollution that is caused by human activities such as burning fossil fuels or greenhouse effects, especially in large companies in the industry. Acid deposition have two types, wet and dry deposition. Wet deposition, commonly known as acid rain, meaning sulfuric and nitric acid are being released in the atmosphere that will slowly transform into rainfall or snow. Next is dry deposition, is the accumulated acidic particles in the surface that is harmful to humans, like health problems such as asthma and bronchitis. Next is how acid deposition develops. To start with the factors, smokes and emissions being released in the atmosphere, then it will be carried by the wind. Then sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxide will react to water and other chemicals in the clouds that will slowly convert into sulfuric and nitric acids. After that, it will start to fall to the surface. Next is the effects of acid deposition, meaning it damages our natural resources and materials that will be unusable to our daily lives. Plants will be less healthy, rivers or lakes will become acidic. For politics, because of the human activities being produced to one place, there is a chance it will be carried over through wind currents to another place that can cause a domino effect. Lastly, recovery. By installing smokestacks or filtering devices will help in reducing the use of sulfur and also releasing emissions from factories that will slowly save the environment. And that is all for my part.
Hi, I'm Nikki Beatriz Tarok, a first-year Bachelor of Science and Psychology student, and I'll be giving you a short and simple presentation about Chapter 10, Freshwater Resources and Water Pollution. Now, let us start with this statement that shows how important water is. All living things need water to survive, which is so true. All living organisms require water for survival. Like, for example, from the smallest fungi to the largest animal, they all need water to live and function properly. Plants need water, bacteria need water, animals need water, and of course, syempre, us humans also need water, diba? Water is an essential part of our lives. It is something now we cannot live without. Like, imagine a day without water. Wala kang tubig na iinumin, no water for shower, wala kang panghugas ng plates, wala kang tubig for cooking. Sa mga ilog, sapa, river, may tubig nga pero very poor quality naman, puro kalat, plastic, tinapon na diaper. That would be so scary. We could probably last a day without water, pero a week without clean and accessible water, I don't think so. So what was my basis when I said we probably wouldn't last a week without clean and accessible water? It is because up to 60% of the human adult body is composed of water. Also, if I remember it right, according to a study, our brain and heart are composed of 73% water. Our lungs are about 83% water. The muscles and kidneys are made out of 79% water. Even our skin has water in it, and our bones are watery. After 3 to 5 days of not drinking water, yung organs natin magsisimula na mag-shut down, especially the brain, which could have lethal consequences including fainting, strokes, and in extreme cases, even deaths. About 71% of the earth is covered in water, and 97% of earth's water is salty, so which means 3% sobrang konti lang ng fresh water natin. And due to some things and circumstances that we will tackle later, mas lalo pa siyang nababawasan at kumukonti. And it is expected na by 2025, 1/3 of the human population will live in areas lacking fresh water. It is a sad thing to hear, but it is very possible. Baka nga hindi lang tayo aware, pero it's already happening. Before moving on, let's first have a throwback to a topic I'm sure all of us tackled in science during grade school or junior high school, the hydrologic cycle, also known as the water cycle. It shows the continuous movement of water within the earth and the atmosphere. That's why it's called a cycle. It is continuous. Ulit-ulit siyang nagaganap. Dito ngayon pumapasok yung evaporation, condensation, precipitation, and such. As stated in the PPT, the water from the ocean evaporates and forms clouds in the atmosphere. Then it goes back to the land or the ground when precipitation occurs. The ground will then absorb the water and it will slowly, gradually flow back into the ocean. Surface water is a key component to the hydrologic cycle. Kapag sinabi natin surface water, this is any body of water above ground, including streams, rivers, lakes, wetlands, reservoirs, and creeks. Groundwater naman is yung supply of fresh water under the Earth's surface. Groundwater are stored in underground aquifers and is discharged into rivers, springs, etc. It is usually considered as a non-renewable resource. When we say non-renewable resource, it means it is a substance that is being used up more quickly than it can replace itself. Since we're already talking about water, let's also find out what it is made of. I'm sure very familiar naman kayo sa term na H2O. Water consists of 3 atoms, 2 hydrogen atoms, and 1 oxygen atom. That's why it's called H2O. One end of it is slightly negative, while the other end is slightly positive, so it appears a bit bent and not linear. Let's move on to the water resources problem. There are plenty of water resources problem, but we can sum it up to 3. It's either we have too much water, too little water, or poor quality water. What are some instances where we have too much water? There's high tide, flooding, typhoon, I think the most common one is flooding, pagbaha. It usually happens kapag may bagyo or maulan or if there's too much water sa mga dam at kailangan nila magpakawala ng tubig, which floods the nearby areas. Let's take Baliwag as an example. Every time na umuulan, lalo na kapag may bagyo, laging may baha sa Baliwag. That's because we're near Bustas Dam and Nagat Dam. So every time na there's too much water in either of those two dams I mentioned at kailangan nila magpakawala ng tubig, affected tayo. For too little water naman, we have this phenomenon called El Nino. It is a climate pattern that describes the unusual warming of surface waters in the eastern equatorial Pacific Ocean. And last, poor quality water. Ano ang isa sa reason bakit tayo nagkakaroon ng poor quality water? Human activities, human negligence, mga taong hindi disiplinado, humans in general. Look at Manila Bay and Pasig River. I've seen old photos and heard stories of its state before. They were like, dati sobrang linis at linaw niyan, halos pwede ko mag-swimming dyan. Ngayon, magsuswimming kayo sa basura. What is an aquifer depletion? To answer, let us first define aquifer. Aquifer is a body of rock and or sediment that holds the groundwater. Aquifer depletion happens when groundwater is removed from the aquifer faster than it is replenished. It happens when there are changes in precipitation and snowmelt patterns or withdrawal of groundwater for drinking, irrigation, and other human uses. Overdrawing surface waters leaves behind waters that are more saline or have a higher salt concentration. It results to damaged ecosystems, dry wetlands, and saltwater intrusion. Salinization is the increase of salt concentration in soil and is, in most cases, caused by dissolved salts in the water supply. This water resource problem, aquifer depletion, overdrawing surface waters, and salinization are just some of the reasons kung bakit unti-unting nababawasan ang fresh water na meron tayo. That's all for my presentation. Here's another group mate of mine to continue a report for Chapter 10, Freshwater Resources and Water Pollution. Thank you!
Sewage. Water, waste from drains and sewers, waste, soaps, detergents, etc. may cause diseases. Eutrophication. Eutrophication is characterized by excessive plant and algae growth due to an increased availability of one or more limiting growth factors needed for photosynthesis, such as sunlight, carbon dioxide, and other nutrient fertilizers. There's two different sources that we can see here: oligotrophic and eutrophic. Oligotrophic is low nutrient levels, good light penetration, high dissolved oxygen, deep waters, low algal growth. And eutrophic, high nutrient levels, poor light penetration, low dissolved oxygen, shallow waters, and high algal growth. And sources of water pollution: natural resources, human generated, point source, specific source, or non-point sources.
Hello, I am Cheska Mias-Fares, PS Ed English major. So another content regarding our Chapter 10, we have global water issues. So there are a lot of arising issues and dilemmas regarding our global water. Each day, there are a lot of billions of people who have access to our water. Ano nga ba yung mga issues natin? We have pollution, overusing, lack of infrastructure, climate change, and global warming. Pero sa Mexico, very common talaga yung water shortage, in which biniblame nila yung heat extremes due to cause of climate change. Sharing water resources. RLC was considered as the world's fourth largest river in the Central Asia. So, noong 1960, nagkaroon na ng diversion between two major rivers. So, bakit nagkaroon ng ganon? So, the main reason kung bakit nagkaroon ng diversion, this is because of the evaporation of unreplenished waters. As a result, nagkaroon ng irrigation, in which naging source siya or reason kung bakit nag-disappear mismo yung RLC. Water management. So, as you can see, the following indicated are the ways on how the water resources are being managed. So, bakit nga ba mahalaga yung pagmamanage ng water? This is because kailangan natin ng activities for planning, managing, and developing the water resources. In that way, mamimit yung benefits na kinakailangan ng mga tao. So, ano ba yung mga benefits? We have adequate drinking water and for sanitation, and also for our health, as well as sustainability ng sources ng water. Columbia River Dams. So, it is characterized as the fourth largest river in the North America. So, we all know that dams was consist of various benefits and advantages. So, we have for the flood protection, energy supply, and water security. However, meron din siyang downsides. So, yung pressure ng water nagkakaroon ng deep holes na nagiging destructive for the shelters of the aquatic animals. So, particularly yung mga salmons. So, for the solution, nagkaroon ng conducted study yung mga researchers. So, they determined two possible solutions na magagawa. So, for modifying the turbines para mas mabawasan pa yung pressures. Also, removing hydroelectric dams. Water conservation. So, first, we have agriculture. So, para sa better life ng ating agriculture, ang best effective way na kailangan natin i-implement is to improve the standard or the quality of the soil para rin sa moisture, oxygen, and nutrients ng plants. So, as you can see in the photo, that is the global water footprint. Of course, beneficial siya globally. So, what is the main function or the main purpose ng global water footprint? It is all about measuring yung water na nako-conserve or nako-consume natin ng mga tao. Either na-distinguish din niya kung polluted na yung isang water within a particular country. For our second water conservation, we have industry. So, of course, in the field of industry, meron tayong various business operations. So, kailangan din doon na nako-conserve natin yung water. There are some ways na kailangan nilang i-implement. First, minimizing yung mga pressures or flow ng water sa kanilang cooling towers. Also, yung pagre-reuse ng non-potable waters nila for another operations nila. Lastly, we have municipals. Of course, it is the houses, the buildings, the schools, or anything. Kailangan din nilang magkaroon ng appropriate utilization ng water. For addition, we have toilet replacement program. So, kailangan nila yon, as well as pag-establish ng water conservation goals. Of course, kailangan din ng mga sufficient amount lang yung pagko-conserve nila or pagko-consume nila ng water. Toilet to tap. So, it was considered as an effective solution sa water shortage sa California. Paano ba siya nagwo-work or nagfa-function? Yung flashed water, tinatransform siya into a drinking water in which magiging effective din siya to enhance or improve yung federal water standard, the municipal sewage treatment. In this part, we have three following levels. So, we have primary, secondary, and tertiary. For our primary, andito yung level na magsususpend tayo or magre-remove tayo ng floating particles. While sa secondary, nandito naman yung mga suspended organisms, ide-decompose na natin. Lastly, the tertiary. So, dito naman magdi-dissolve na tayo ng mga substances. Controlling water pollution. So, those implemented acts, laws, and awareness is all about the appropriate utilization ng ating water resources. So, effective siya para ma-save natin yung mga aquatic animals from various devastating impacts or sufferings, as well as ma-decrease natin yung percentage ng water pollution, and of course, to conserve the water.
The global ocean and world fisheries. Our ocean covers 3/4 of the Earth's surface. It is divided into 4 sections: Pacific, Atlantic, Indian, and the Arctic. Our ocean is also a vast wilderness. It means it's an open and huge world. Essential to the hydrologic cycle, it's where most of our rain forms, so we're familiar with that concept. And also, it supplies nutrients to the plants. And by that, it also supplies the animals for the environment, patterns, and circulation. So this is the global wind pattern. We also have gyres, which are circular wind patterns. The influence of Coriolis effect. So here and here in the western lights, we have slow winds. And in the middle, we have fast winds. And if you take a look at this motion pattern of wind, it creates a clockwise. So by that, the formation of typhoons, clockwise typhoons. Opposite to the other side, that's why we have counterclockwise typhoons. And so, and climate. El Nino Southern Oscillation is a recurring climate pattern involving changes in the temperature of waters in the central and eastern tropical Pacific Ocean. So during that time, we could trade winds, so we will have warm waters. And by that, cool nutrient-rich water remains offshore at great depths. And also, you can see here, when El Nino occurs, fish goes to cooler and nutrient-rich water. The problem to that is that seabirds don't have fish to catch, which they will be forced to migrate. Impacts in coral reefs. Warm water makes our coral reefs bleach. Also, polar ice caps melting, which means the rising of sea levels. Rising of sea levels. Scientists have warned sea levels could rise by over 11 feet every century due to climate change. The trend could continue for several hundred of years. During 1997 to 98, we have the strongest record of ENSO. La Nina is a weather phenomenon characterized by unusually cold ocean temperature in the equatorial Pacific, which causes increased numbers of tropical storms in the Pacific Ocean. So usually or sometimes after El Nino, there comes La Nina. The opposite of El Nino is La Nina. So instead of hot, we would have cold air or cold climate, which means strong trade winds, warm water moves away, and cool nutrient-rich water upwells. But it's more and more than usual. Human impacts in the ocean. So we have human wastes dumped by ships, oil spills, which kills our fishes, especially birds, turtles, and more inhabitants of the ocean. Did you know that there's an island made out of garbage? It's called the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. It is garbage patches that were collected by the gyres. So trash circulating around that area, creating an island full of garbage. So garbage also kills coral reefs and also coastal developments. Coastal development and constructions destroy nearby coral reefs. World fisheries. Our ocean provides a lot of food, which could also lead to the decreasing amount of fish in the ocean. Fishing industry challenges. For centuries, beginning with the age of exploration, when ships were developed that could convey humans across the globe, governments that represent people like you, the ocean's owner, agreed that no one owned the oceans. This informal agreement was referred to as the Freedom of the Seas Doctrine. But can a country own the ocean? The foundation in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, it says that a country may claim an area extending 12 nautical miles from its coast as its own territorial sea. One of the challenges of the ocean is bycatch should be reduced due to overfishing. Modern fishing methods. Aquaculture. It is the farming of fish in a certain smaller area. Crowding can affect the health of the fish. Why? So it pollutes the fish farm. Fish waste builds up below the pens, lowering the surrounding water quality and affecting the ecosystem, which means it's bad for the water and also bad for the fish. A problem to wild species. Predator control program. Animals targeted to control predation of farmed fish. A different method to aquaculture fishing, we have line fishing. So it's a line of hooks with baits that could also bait up unintentional species. The purse seine method. It is a huge circular net that scoops and traps the fishes. Same with trawling. And we also have the drift netting. It is like a long fence of nets where when fish swims through, they get trapped. Also, not just fishes but other unintentional species. Tracking and spotting. Fish spotting planes or spotter planes spot and track fish from aerial view. Sonar tracking. Track and determine fishes in school using sonar waves. How fish aggregating device tracking works. FAD buoys transmit messages to a satellite. The satellite signals the FAD's owner so it knows where to send fishing boats. Simultaneously, the satellite can signal the parties to natural elements database and be shared with scientists to improve understanding and management of the fishery. Offshore resource extraction. So what are these? These are called manganese nodules, minerals that are found on the ocean floor. Uses. The most important use of manganese in the manufacturing of steel, manganese gives the steel strength and hardness. Eco-Canada career focus. Consider a career as a limnologist. What is limnology? The study of limnology includes aspects of the biological, chemical, physical, and geological characteristics and functions of inland waters. This includes the study of lakes, reservoirs, ponds, rivers, springs, streams, wetlands, and groundwater. So it also plays a key role in protecting these freshwater bodies. Case study: Saving Lake Winnipeg. Lake Winnipeg is the 10th largest fresh body of water. Over 5.5 million of people live within the watershed. Nearly 20 million livestock raised in there. Commercial fishing, hydroelectric power, recreation and tourism, and downstream communities all place demands on the ecosystem. Huge loads of nitrogen and phosphorus are causing changes to the health of the lake. 70 years of study reveal that the lake is approaching deterioration. In 2003, Lake Winnipeg Action Plan created committing to reduce nutrient loads, collective effort needed to save the lake.
Good day everyone, I am Mika del sa Ipile, a second-year BSBA Financial Management student. I am here together with Janelle to discuss the next and the 11th chapter entitled The Ocean and the Fisheries, focusing on the microplastics in the ocean. As we all know po, our country, which is the Philippines, is surrounded by bodies of water. Additionally, as per the census, meron po tayong more or less 1.4 million population as of now. So, we can see na hindi maiiwasang maka-accumulate yung different bodies of water natin, including the oceans, lakes, rivers, and seas na mga ginagamit natin for everyday. The most crucial example in here are the plastics that most of the people uses. The ones na nagamit na, such as plastic cups, ay diretso disposed na. As I've said a while ago, we are focusing on the microplastics. So, ano nga ba ang mga microplastics? As per definition, they are small plastic pieces less than 5 mm long. Ibig sabihin, they are totally small na kasing liit na isang butel ng munggoseed. And they can be harmful to our ocean and aquatic life, or even to us humans. Plastic is dangerous to the health of every individual. So imagine, once na may mga microplastics na matake yung mga fishes or seafoods and ma-stuck sa katawan nila yon, diba ang harmful na for them? But what makes it more harmful is that we humans are buying those fishes and ginagawa nating ulam. Kumbaga, plastics to microplastics to ocean and aquatic life up to us humans. Damay-damay ganon. But di natatapos din yung chain kasi ginagamit ulit ng mga tao ng plastics and babalik ulit yon sa microplastics and so on and so on. So, it is a chain. Move forward, they are present in a variety of products from cosmetics to synthetic clothing to plastic bags and bottles. Many of these products easily enter the environment and waste. We all know plastics. Makikita natin sila anywhere and everywhere, such as sa mga packaging, shopping bags, in sa mga groceries and tindahan, in our clothing, and in different home appliances. Yung mga material na ginagamit in order for it to made ay mostly oils, gases, and coils, which are absolutely non-biodegradable. And often, it ends up as a trash on the ground and in the ocean. To further understand what microplastics is, here is the video from the National Ocean Service.
Plastic is everywhere. A lot of it ends up in the ocean. Most plastics in the ocean break down into very small particles. These small plastic bits are called microplastics. Other plastics are intentionally designed to be small. They're called microbeads and are used in many health and beauty products. They pass unchanged through waterways into the ocean. Aquatic life and birds can mistake microplastics for food. Research is being conducted, but there's much we still don't know. In 2015, the US banned the use of microbeads, but microplastics are still a huge problem. You can help keep plastic out of the ocean. Remember, reduce, reuse, and recycle.
So, here is the process or what people call weathering process. Kung bakit nga ba nagkakaroon ng microplastics? Through the presence of heat by the sun, wind, as well as waves, na paghihiwa-hiwalay or na-disintegrate yung mga plastics bit by bit into even smaller parts. For example, in sewage water treatment plants, millions of tons of microplastics are distributed everywhere, and that's increasing. The problem with microplastic is that they do not readily break down into harmless molecules. Plastics can take hundreds or thousands of years to decompose. Sa beaches, makikita natin sila as tiny multicolored plastic bits in sand, and in the oceans naman, microplastic pollution is often consumed by marine animals. Moving on, microplastics has two types, namely primary and secondary microplastics. For the primary one, it can be described as tiny particles designed for commercial use, such as cosmetic and as well as microfiber shed from clothing and other textiles, meaning these are small plastic pellets. In industry, for instance, yung mga pellets na yan is nagsaserve as the basic material para sa mga plastic products. Like yun sa mga cosmetic and household stuff, yung mga plastics ay nag-a-act as granules or in liquid form. Kaya nagiging problem siya because kapag nagsishower or naglalaba, for example, the particles get into the sewer water, on land, and in water bodies. Baka magtaka kayo na what if malayo naman sa mga ocean, ganon. The process is, yung mga particles from our clothes, for example, is nakakarry ng rain papunta sa mga sewage system. The smaller the particles, the harder it is to filter. Secondary plastics, on the other hand, are particles that result from the breakdown of larger plastic items such as water bottles. Yung breakdown na sinasabi dito is caused by exposure to environmental factors, mainly the sun's radiation and ocean waves. Given the large amount of microplastics entering the environment, it is generally assumed that most microplastics in the environment are secondary plastics. Ang panagkaiba lang nilang dalawa is that yung primary plastics are yung mga tiny particles na ginagamit para makagawa ng mga products, while itong secondary plastics are the particles naman na galing sa mismong products. So in other words, they are connected with each other and they are harmful for the health and the environment itself. Microplastics in the Philippines. For the first bullet, hindi talaga natin makakaila na dito sa atin, especially sa mga tabi ng rivers and oceans, hindi maiiwasan ang kalat and pagtatapon. Even may mga signages, people always choose to put and throw trashes. Kahit alam nila sa sarili nila na it has impact on everyone's health as well to the environment. For the second bullet, as we all know, yung Pasig River is nagpapossess ng polluted situation with the occurrence of microplastics in its surface water. It is likely that the Pasig River contributes to the microplastic burden of Manila Bay and connecting larger bodies of water.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Juniel D. Serapio, BSBA major in Financial Management. We will discuss the cause and effects of microplastic. First is the cause of microplastics. Ang mga microplastics ay maaaring ginagawa mula sa mga particular na industrial of domestic applications. Ito ay tinatawag na primary microplastics at maaaring release inadvertently into the oceans. 2. Microplastics ay resulta ng fragmentation ng malalaking plastics objects. Ang mga plastic ay nahihiwalay at pumupunta sa dagat na resulta ng iba't ibang mga sea-based activity, pero walang reliable na statement na dami na kasama sa regional or global scale. 4. Microplastics ay distributed sa dagat na makikita sa pangpang at sea base. May tanong dito, why microplastics are dangerous? The Pacific Ocean now, home to the largest accumulations of ocean plastics called the Great Pacific Garbage Pitch. This pitch covers 1.6 million square kilometers and contains about 1.8 trillion pieces of plastics, and 94% of these items are microplastics. Many small creatures mistake the plastic for food and end up ingesting them. These small creatures may then get eaten by bigger animals, and the plastic continues to pass through the food cycles na nagdudulot ng kapamakan sa mga hayop at syempre kasama na tayo ditong mga tao. Ocean plastics is increasing at such a rate. It's predicted that by 2050, there will be more plastic than fish in the sea. At ang mga marine plants tulad ng phytoplankton ay depensa sa araw para sa photosynthesis, kung saan ito'y nagre-release ng oxygen. Kung walang sapat na araw ay mawawala sila, at dahil sila'y nabubuo base sa marine food cycle ay magiging sanhi ng pagkawala ng mga organism na tumutulong sa pag-produce ng tamang oxygen na umaabot sa 70%. Now, the effects of microplastics. Ang mga microplastics ay matatagpuan sa loob ng katawan ng maraming marine organisms. Kasama dito ay ang mga isda, ibon at mga mammals, and microplastics mean potentially spread through the food chain when marine, terrestrial, and freshwater species that have previously eaten microplastics by other creatures. According to laboratory studies, various chemicals used as raw materials or additives during the manufacture of plastics can seep into the environment. Humans and other animals are exposed to these compounds when they swallow plastics, when they leach into food, or when plastics are burned and released into the atmosphere. Humans and wildlife, including birds and marine species, have been found to be exposed to toxins linked to plastics. Ang maliliit na size ng microplastics ay maaaring makaapekto sa cell membrane na under laboratories condition, causing tissues, and the largest marine species will generally transport microplastics, can however be kept into the stomachs for long periods of time, causing abrasions and damage to internal tissues. Nanoplastics have the ability to slip through the skin wall and go to many regions of the body, including the lungs and liver, where they can cause harm. In order to fully comprehend and potentially health consequences of swallowing microplastics. Number 4. The effects of microplastics. Ingestion of microplastic by smaller creatures such as marine and freshwater invertebrates can cause a variety of problems, including impaired reproduction and growth. When microplastics are taken instead of digestible food, physical harm such as lacerations and inflammatory responses, as well as impaired eating behavior, induce these effects. Filter feeders like mussels are especially susceptible to eaten microplastics because they filter large amounts of water, while finding the effects differ depending on the species, the types of plastic used, and the amount of microplastics present. Microplastic can be consumed by a wide range of organisms, from microscopic zooplankton to sharks. The numbers of microplastics in the environment and how closely they resemble food influence whether or not they are consumed. Microplastic mean potentially spread through the food chains when marine, terrestrial, and fresh water species that have previously eaten microplastics are preyed by other creatures. 6. They may, however, after a nutritional concern by transporting plastic-associated pollutants to other tissues, we are most likely consuming some levels of plastic in our food. A rising amounts of evidence suggests that the accumulations of toxins linked to plastic constitutes a threat to food safety and public health. However, no comparison has been made between the levels of plastics and associated chemicals we are exposed to in our meals and other daily activity. It is not yet known the degree of harm this exposure could be causing us or what happened to such microplastic within the human's bodies. Last is solution. Siyempre, kapag lahat ng tao ay binawasan ang paggamit ng plastic, unti-unti ay makakapunta tayo sa isang mas malinis na mundo. Pangalawa, siyempre, kailangan mabago yung ating mindset mula sa pagtatapon papuntang investment. And the last, kailangan pumili tayo ng mga natural product at damit na gawa sa natural fibers at materials tulad ng wool na ginagawa ng natural at biodegradable easily at hindi delikado sa mga aquatic life.
Alright, that is it for our presentation. Thank you for watching and thank you for listening, everyone. I hope you guys are having an amazing day, and if not, I know that you guys are doing your best to make it an awesome one. That is it. Adios. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. Char!